For those of you that don't know, my name is Jenny McClay. I'm the ICA social media coordinator, and we're here with Jessica Harry, who is the executive director of operations. And we're going to introduce our special guest in just a second. I don't know how long we want to wait for everyone to get here. Maybe a couple more seconds. I think we could go ahead and get started. So I'm really excited to welcome Reinhard Wieser, who is joining us today from Vienna. And hello, where it's evening time now. It's what, 10 p.m.?
It's 10 p.m. in Vienna, exactly. Yeah.
Well, thank you for joining us so late in the evening on your Friday evening.
My pleasure, my pleasure. Thank you very much for the invitation.
And he is going to be talking today. Oh, sorry to interrupt. You are going to be talking about practice tips and tricks and orchestral excerpts. I know you have quite a lot to say. So as he is sharing his wisdom, if anyone has any questions or comments, feel free to leave those in the chat. Jessica and I will be moderating the chat to just ask away. So anything that you would like to know, as well as if you're watching on Facebook, leave a comment on the Facebook and we will get your questions answered. And with that, I'm going to stop my video and let you take it away.
Okay, so welcome everybody from Vienna. As Jenny was introducing, it's 10 p.m. So have a nice evening and afternoon in America. And as there will be probably a lot of talking, I just thought I will introduce the lecture with one of our most wonderful excerpts, and that's Tosca from Puccini. So just a little music for the beginning. So I hope everybody was hearing a clarinet actually. And I just wanted to start off with my, as you know, I teach for many years and I play in the orchestra for many years, and I've developed sort of a standard procedure for practicing and preparing orchestral passages, which has developed over the years. And which I recommend to everybody, especially my students, of course, what they not always do, but mostly they do it. So my recommendations are, first, you should listen to at least 5 recordings of the piece or of the pieces, and probably also with orchestras from the country of the composer of the whole piece, from the country of the composer. So if you're listening to Brahms, you probably should listen to 1 or 2 recordings of a German or Austrian orchestra, of at least of an European orchestra, also, maybe not only. And if you play an American passage or a passage of Bartók, you should listen to an American orchestra, to a Hungarian orchestra, and also, of course, in opera from Italy, you should listen to several orchestras from Italy. Yeah? That's always very interesting. And if it comes to opera, of course, with more singers, with recordings of many singers also. And then I recommend, of course, you listen to the whole piece, not only the orchestral passage you are actually playing. Next recommendation is you get the whole score and not only the clarinet score. So it's really recommendable to see and to know all the music which is composed. Then you should check for mistakes and ambiguities in the text. If in one edition there's a ritardando or piano or mezzo piano or something, and in the other not. So there are also collections of orchestral passages. Also check these especially exactly to be sure what's printed by the composer. And then of course check the musical instructions of the composer. And of course, mostly try to follow them if it's not too fast, maybe, and not too loud or too soft. If there are any questions, or if I'm talking too fast, just ask away, no problem at all. I can make a break every time. Then, of course, you should read about the history of the piece and of the composer. I will show this on, I've prepared 4 or 5 examples for the lecture. So I will also show this style of working and preparing a passage on the actual passage, of course. So read about the history of the piece and know about the composer. Okay. Next thing, it's important to check if the passage or a similar structure in the music is played somewhere else. When you think just of Tosca, which I played before, the whole third act of the opera is played first. This melody you play in the clarinet, it's played before by the violins, by the woodwinds. So, and check with what is the tempo there and by whom is it played. And is there an influence of this for my passage or inspiration? Or what can I do different to make the piece more interesting? Is it the same tempo? Is it the same articulation? Which expression does it have when it's played by the violins? We are joined by, when you play it on the clarinet, you are joined by the singer. Also this makes the situation different. Okay. Of course, if you play a piece with when there is text or a libretto, if it is opera, or if lyrics is involved, think of the music of Mahler or Richard Strauss. Maybe this changes the whole reception of the piece and maybe also has an influence to the style how you play your solo. Okay, so how is the situation of the text of the influencing what you may play? And of course, how is the musical situation in the piece of your passage? Is another instrument playing with you? Is somebody joining you, or are you alone? This is all very important. Okay. Another point to mention is it comes back to the recordings. If you apply for a certain orchestra, if it's possible, attend a concert by these orchestras or listen to recordings. Maybe it's easy for very famous orchestras, and when you live in the same city, of course, you should go to a concert. Then back to music again. Check the musical situation in which you are in. Which is the dynamics is this written. If it's, when you think of the dances of Galanta, it's forte and you have to play over and must be heard over the whole orchestra, and you are really alone and you have to play extremely loud. Or when you think of the Symphonie Fantastique, it's written something like piano or mezzo forte, and still you have to play really loud. And do you draw your conclusions and probably ask a musical friend or a teacher or an experienced person how a piano is to be interpreted. Okay. And also there's a big difference between audition and actual orchestra playing. An audition is probably one of the most difficult situations in your life. Everybody, I think, who is a professional or a student knows about this. You really get nervous when you think about an audition. And actual orchestra playing, you sit beneath your colleagues, sometimes your friends, and And the actual pressure of having to perform perfectly is the same. But you are beneath your friends, you are a member of the orchestra, and you drink a coffee after the concert. And so it's a whole different situation. And but actually what you're doing is the same, but it's also different. Everybody knows that. Okay. So some passages in the orchestra aren't really that nasty after all, and others which look easy are really difficult with the orchestra. Okay. So are there any questions so far? Everything clear?
I don't see any questions now, but feel free, everyone. I encourage you to ask away. We have an expert here who is more than willing to help answer your questions.
Okay. Don't see the chat. Perfect. Okay. Then we come to the actual playing, the actual practicing part, which sometimes takes only weeks, sometimes takes months. So when you are a student, you probably know Mr. Jung is asking something. How can I see this? I see it. Yeah.
Yeah, she wants to know if there's a differences between American orchestras and European orchestra audition processes.
I can only, from experience, I can only speak about European and Austrian audition process. Maybe I tell you how the process here is here. If there is a limited number of people who want to for the audition, then or maybe until 5 or 10 years ago, we just made a first round with a concerto, mostly by Mozart, and one or two orchestral passages behind a curtain. And then there was a second round and a third round with always fewer people, of course. And in the end, there was a winner if you were lucky. Yeah? But now we are thinking, as the numbers of applicants steadily increase, we are more and more thinking of video, how do you say, auditions for the first round or for the student round, which it's getting more and more common in Europe also. And we have the so-called student audition, where students with no or limited orchestral experience can play and can audition to play in the main round. Okay, so in the main round in our orchestra, there are between, let's say, 15 and 30 applicants are in the main round. Okay. I hope this helps. Yeah. And in America, what I hear from America, there are much larger numbers of applicants. So there is in America, we should ask American colleagues maybe, but I think video auditioning is much more common in the USA. Yeah. But I think in the second or third rounds, when it comes to fewer people, then there is a normal audition process in America also. But I think there are larger numbers. Okay, I hope this is okay for Miss Young. Okay, all clear, very good. So then we come to actual practicing. When you see the work and the score before you, I recommend before every practicing, I recommend to analyze very clearly why the passage is an audition passage. If it's a technical issue or things, if it's really difficult to play, then that's clear. But make yourself clear what is the point of the passage and work accordingly, and think what the orchestra members really want to hear from you. Do they want to hear a lot of expression? Do they want to hear perfect technique? Of course, when you think of Shostakovich 9, it will be perfect technique. Is it really nice phrasing when you think of Tosca? Is it perfect rhythm when you think of Bolero? And can I use agogics a lot? It's many students play to me when you think of the Beethoven symphonies. They play, when you think of 6 of Beethoven, they play. Okay, that was the A clarinet if you wonder, sorry for that. When you know the score, you will see that you are not so free at all, because the violins, the bassoon, the horns, so many people play with you, and that's what you have to know before you start practicing it, because it influences the way you practice for a passage. Okay. Do I have to practice perfect staccato for that? I have some things to share with you then afterwards. Which dynamics do I use? Which articulation do I use? When you think again of 6 of Beethoven, there's this end in the passage in the end. This is one of the nastiest passages ever, because it's together with bassoon. And it's really very difficult to be very exact in time, and together with your colleague and together with the strings and the conductor. Okay, so is it about tone quality? Is it about breathing when you think of Tosca? Is it about endurance? And choose very exactly and carefully the areas where you want to work. Okay, like in every practicing, I recommend you switch on sometimes your metronome. So you have a clear picture of the tempo you want to play. Of course, then you vary it, and then you make your own music, always considering the instructions by the composer. For intonation passages like Tosca, like the Unfinished Symphony by Schubert, use your piano. Just play a note and try to play the correct intervals with your clarinet, so that you can check your intonation. Sometimes even use your tuning machine when it comes to very high notes. Sometimes it's difficult to determine if you're correct. And then, of course, mostly technically, mostly staccato wise, check for, I don't call them problem zones, but I call them special care zones. So everybody knows what I mean there. When you think of Shostakovich 9, when you think of this, everybody knows. As far as I know, it's also difficult on the Böhm clarinet, and you are so alone there. So practice it really exactly. If you want tips for that, I have some things prepared also. Okay, if it comes to really exact technique, and be sure to really practice. I always tell my students, practice 1000% likewise. Because when you think of a sports, of a tennis player or of a ski jumper, you prepare a passage or a movement, like in sports, you prepare it many times. And if you can really prepare it 10 times, 100%, so you are really happy with that, then you have 1000% altogether. And if you can if you can play a passage like 10 times or 5 times or 3 times really perfectly, you should feel well even in the most difficult audition for Chicago Symphony. But you never know. That's why it's an orchestral passage. And at the same time, you should be, and all this should give you sort of relaxation, because after all, it's about making music, and music should bring joy. Okay, there is a question.
We actually have a few questions. The first, do you recommend practicing with recordings in the learning process?
Yep. Bill means probably recording yourself. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, not too much maybe, because I never liked my own recordings, but it's you can learn a lot from your own recordings. You probably won't like them, but it's an important point. It is a practicing method. Yeah, so a clear yes to this.
What about, I'm sorry to interrupt.
Yeah.
What about practicing with recordings, like performances of pre-existing recordings? I don't know if that's what Bill meant. Maybe he could clarify, but
That's what I'm asking myself. I recommended before to listen to at least 5 recordings of the piece, of course, yeah, but also not too much, because you should build your own picture of the passage, because it's you who is auditioning, and the orchestra wants to get to know playing with an existing recording. Yeah, Bill knows the answer for himself. I would say only to learn the basics, maybe to understand a tricky rhythm. I did that as a student, actually. I loved it, yeah. But I would not consider it a real practicing method. It's just to get to know the piece and to enjoy the music, basically. But then you have to move on to yourself, basically. Yeah? But you never can know the piece well enough. When I started, I played Rachmaninov piano concerto, and I'm sure I knew the piece better than everybody around me when I was 19 years old. So it's preparation is the key to everything, and so I agree with Bill. You can do that, but maybe not more than 2 or 3 times, or how you feel well with it. Yeah. But it's always interesting, even after so many years as a musician, it's always interesting for me to listen to other orchestras. How do they play a certain passage? So it's always interesting if Bill means that also. Okay. Any more
and
questions?
another question, yes, a few. We have one from Facebook. Any recommendations for the Beethoven 6th Symphony solos?
Yes. I just check where it is in my a general recommendation, or
It looks like general recommendations or anything that you would like to share about those solos.
okay, just a moment. Yeah, just take my B clarinet, because it would be not good for my reputation. Yeah, I'm talking about the first movement. When it comes to this passage, probably a little difference between the 2 passages. Maybe I would recommend to play the second time louder a little, and then that's such a nice thing. Here you have to know that you play with the bassoon, and so you're not totally free. If the bassoonist is a friend of yours, you can try to make a little something on the C, A, F sharp. Maybe only the second time. It's also a passage which comes twice. So maybe there might be a little a variation of dynamics and of agogics possible, but also not too much, because there's strings with you. Okay. And then when it comes to the when it comes to that, yeah, a lot of recommendations. For me, this are 2 small melodies, 2 small singing melodies of, it's called heitere Empfindungen, so nice feelings when you arrive at the countryside in your beautiful home in Long Island or wherever. And then it comes this, and then this is a reflection. you get in the dolce, maybe it's dolce again, and you play the articulation a little longer. And then you come to the dominant again. And to the forte, it's very important to make a big difference here. And then you get softer again. So we have a lot of tension and resolution in the next 8 bars. And you might think of playing the dominant a little shorter, a little louder, of course, and the solution a little softer articulation. And yeah, that's and while you think all that, keep the tempo. That's the difficult thing here, because the strings have a pitch, and they might wait for you, but they don't do it always. So it's a tricky thing, this passage. So everything clear for the first movement? Okay, no. Okay, then I suppose the second movement is interesting too. I'm just speaking of the second passage of the F major passage. The difficult thing here is probably not to be too slow with the appoggiatura. So quite fast, the embellishment. Then here I recommend to phrase to the middle of the bar, because I think it's subdominant there, and F major in the beginning, and tonica in the beginning. And I try to go in my work, I try to go to in the music, I try to go to the tension. Maybe it's not so much tension here, but it's very elegant to play a little espressive on the C. And then relax when you play up. Maybe a little more crescendo here, and then you start out your big solo. And of course here, this is a good example. Here you have to know in which bar you are really alone. In the last but one bar, bar 76 here, in the G minor bar, and you can really enjoy that with a little ritardando. This is really clarinet at its best here, and a quite big crescendo in bar 75. I would recommend. Okay. The third movement, not so much fun at all. Although it's called funny, how do you call it? Funny meeting of the land people, of the country people. Well, this is basically a dance. Here you're wrong. In 114, you're playing probably one bar too early. But then you have a really nice dance. Okay, this crescendo is always a little tricky because you're in danger of making a squeak, but go for it. It's all about fun. You know, the country people, they're not so exact with that. If it's really fast, you might want to consider to change to double tonguing. I did this the last time because Philip Jordan was doing it so terribly fast, but it was fun. Huh? So, but of course, then you have to be able to change from single to double tonguing at first, but this is a lecture in itself. Maybe we should avoid that for today. And then there is basically the 3/4 bar, but you have you can also lean on the 2 rhythm, on the hemiola inside this rhythm. And this makes it really a dancing feeling. So that public doesn't know exactly which rhythm there is, yeah. But don't get caught up yourself and stay too long on the, because then you are too late, and that's really nasty with the strings then. And then you get nervous, and then this D7 will be really nasty when you are behind. Okay. So what do you say? The fifth movement for me is not really, it's a beautiful passage, but be assured the hornist is more nervous than you there. So for me, it's not a real audition passage. Okay. Any questions for the Beethoven Symphony? All clear?
I think it's all clear. We just have one more general question.
Okay.
How would you approach playing in orchestral solos with other instruments? For example, with flute, bassoon, strings, how would you use your sound color, staccato, and everything else to blend with other instruments?
Probably for that, we should switch to the scherzo of Mendelssohn. I just have it here, just one. Yeah, blending. When you look at the Midsummer Night's Dream, that's for me a good example for that. For the scherzo from the Midsummer Night's Dream, in your preparation, from your really nice preparation we spoke about before, you know that the clarinets are maybe the third and fourth voice in this passage, and you have to know that the flutes are the chefs here, and you have to play accordingly, which in this situation, when you think of this, so you're really playing third and fourth violin here, or viola, whatever. And matching here means to match with the phrasing of the flute player. So if the flute leans on the dominant, what I would not prefer, but if the flute player offers this and you don't have a problem, is then go with him or her. But if the flute phrases to the second bar, or asks you for a nice diminuendo here, then just do it. So the first row of the woodwinds in a professional orchestra offers a kind of phrasing if the conductor doesn't disturb in any other way. And normally bassoon and clarinet try to match these phrasings. Of course, if you don't like anything at all, then you just ask, hey, my friend, could we phrase maybe to the fourth bar or to the sixth bar or whatever, okay? And of course, matching mostly means, playing perfectly in tune, which is, especially with flute, sometimes not that easy, because the flute in piano and in forte, they go in different directions. When you get high, they get low, and the opposite. So, but somehow you manage. And so first be in tune, and second, play the second voice, be a little defensive and try to match in the phrasing. And if it's really a solo, there are many solos. If it's an unisono passage, for example, with flute, or which is very often the case, or with oboe, probably for me the instrument which is higher in the score is the leading instrument. So if I play with bassoon, I try to lead a little. Okay, or when you play with horn, it's a different thing, because the hornist normally sits a little far away. You just have to be in tune and talk to the colleague maybe in the break of the rehearsal if you don't agree with his phrasing. But normally it works like the flutes or oboes or the first violins, if they have the passage, or the concertmaster. When it comes to Richard Strauss, for example, if somebody in a like first violin or flute offers a phrasing, you try to copy that. And then there is still a conductor who might want something different. Okay. I hope this answers the question. Okay. But being in tune is probably the most important thing. Okay. Let's see if I have something in my thing, in my Word document. Tosca, there are probably no questions to Tosca. Yeah, I called this Midsummer Night's Dream in my preparation for this today. I called it, it is an ensemble, a matching solo, the Midsummer Night's Dream. And only when you look at the score, this passage in 15, it's really alone the two clarinets, and this really has to be perfect. And then you play with the flute players again. Okay. So, and also this glitters out a little, and also this passage is very well hearable. Okay. And when you think of another famous matching solo, when we come back to Beethoven, the fourth of Beethoven in the fourth movement, I hope everybody knows that it's played with the violins. Here, probably you again have to change to double tonguing, and you have to perfectly match with the violins. And what you actually do is you don't play a solo, you just try to match in somehow, depending on the tempo. So you won't play louder than the violins. Or the conductor asks you to play a little more. Yeah? Luckily, we are not alone here. The bassoon players are really alone here, and we are luckily not. Yeah? Thank you, Mr. Beethoven. Okay. So, okay. Second movement of Brahms 3. I suppose that question is interesting for everybody. I just have to look for it. Just a moment. How would you perform this excerpt? Of course, beautifully. Just play it beautiful and nicely. I think it's bassoons and horns there. But you, how would I perform it? I know here that I'm the leading voice, at least in the first bar. Yeah, until bar 8. Yeah, you are the leading. Then, yeah, you are the leading voice all the time. There's always these questions. Maybe a second time a little more. And here start a little softer again. And the sound, baby, should be a sound which leads the woodwind section, bassoons and horns, and also horn, but is really like a choral voice. Yeah, what you're writing is, what you're asking is correct. Yeah? You are the first voice, maybe the soprano of a chorus there, and have to act accordingly. Of course, you are rhythmically not free, because also Brahms writes simplice. Espressivo, yes. You're the first voice, but you have to match in. You have tight hands here. And it's very, very difficult to be in tune here, because it's always difficult with horns. Okay. But on the other hand, you really have to offer your view of things here. Yeah? The conductor will help you there. But one of the most difficult things is here is the beginning. You might use a real big breathing there, so everybody knows when you really play. Okay. Okay, question answered. Good. All clear. Okay. So Brahms is really tricky to perform. It's always so difficult to, especially second and fourth symphony, second movement of fourth symphony, it's so difficult to be in tune really exactly. I read about Sergio Santos, but not really. No, the answer is no. Sorry. I was in Brazil twice, but I had no possibility. We were touring all the time, and I was on the beach and in Zuckerhut. So sorry, no. Naila Proveta, Paulo Sergio Santos. I read the name somewhere, but no, sorry. Okay. So then maybe let's move on. If there are no more questions, I just will move on to the Shostakovich one more time, because it's an interesting solo in many ways. Because it's really perfectly composed for clarinet in the perfect clarinet area, which gives you a really nice sound over the string pizzicato. And it's really solo until letter A. So after the, and you really can show everything. The rhythm is also interesting here because we have a 6/8 bar, probably simple, but then it's basically 3, and then it's again 3, and you could lean a little on the always on the first 16th note, maybe a small crescendo, and then of course the big crescendo, and then you stay loud, quite long loud, and then you can really perfect nice diminuendo to the piano again. And this is where the other woodwinds come in and save you, so nobody notices you are breathing. This is one of the passages which is really more more nasty or nastier in an audition, because after letter A, after here, you're hidden amongst flute and other woodwind players, and in the audition you are alone. So everybody waits if you're breathing or not, which is not so important here. You can breathe. You can play really loud here, of course. Okay. So is there any question for the Shostakovich piece? A lot of dynamics, of course.
I don't see one for the Shostakovich, but we have one about the Tosca. Could we use some rubato at the beginning of the solo?
Of course. Not some, a lot. The interesting thing is when it is played, I just have to go back to Tosca. Why is it? Here it is. When this when you play this, you are in a 6/4 bar, and the interesting thing is that's why it's so important to look at the score. I just have to look it up. Just a moment. Here it is. When the solo is in the violins and woodwinds before. It's in the violins before when Cavaradossi enters. It's a 4/4 bar, and the music is. Let me just look. The music is. In a 4/bar in the violins. Okay, so ba da 2 da 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 3 ba da, and that's the interesting thing. Why it's only 3. We have only a 3/4 bar actually. It's not 4/4. It's 3/4. So it's clearly written crotchets and 16th notes. Am I telling this right? So 8th and 16th notes. I hope it's clear for everybody. And when it comes in shortly later at figure 8, at least in my score, it's in the flute and also in the clarinet. I play it once more. And it's 8. 8. The first 3 are 8 notes. Then it's 16 notes for this. And it's even 32nd notes. Okay, so it's clearly written out that we get slower. And it's again a 3/4 bar. And when you come to the clarinet solo, you have a 6/4 bar, and that's really interesting. So the theme also by the composer is really varied, and he writes rubando, which means which means of course you can get a little slower. It actually means stealing, sweet, vaguely stealing. I was checking in English, especially for you. Dolcissimo vagamente, so it means don't be clear in the rhythm. And also there's written ritardando in the score. So of course a clear yes. When I first played at the beginning, I didn't use a lot of rubato, because the interesting thing is everybody plays. And I always wondered when I played it why everybody plays faster in the da di da da da, where it says actually ritardando and rubando. You could interpret these rubando as stealing a little time, then it would say a little faster again. But I think it's only everybody plays it like that because we know it like that. And when you look at some bars later, it's written again in 3/4 bar. In the middle of the solo, and again rubando. So and depending on the singers, of course, you can lean how much rubato afterwards your singer uses. When we were playing it at Lake Constance with really good singers, we used a lot of time, not only at the beginning, but here. Okay, so I hope so a clear yes. And you can not only at the beginning, but in the whole thing, you must act like a tenor. And tenors, as we do know, can make rubatos. Okay. One important thing is in this solo is that you have to get back to piano again. When you come to the minor passage here, yeah, to the B minor, I think it is. Yeah. You have to be really, really soft in order to make a real, to get really loud here. And then when don't know if you have the text here. It's a really very romantic text. And the stars were shining and the earth was scented. The gate of the garden creaked. I like this passage so much. And the footstep grazed the sand. Fragrant she entered. This is the passage when she enters. Ella fragrante entrava. Entrava elle fragrante. We have this really, really nice, what do you call it? The deceptive cadence at the end of the, I hope that's the right word. After the big finish. So we have a big question in the harmony with the Trugschluss here, which we call it in German. And then it gets really loud. And again, sostenendo vagamente. Then you really hope you are in tune with your colleague on second clarinet. The big hour of the second clarinet. Playing a really loud and hopefully not too flat G. And then you're out of breath anyway. So when you play this passage, you really get respect for singers because they have to act like this the whole opera. Like Franz Welser-Möst said in an interview once, he was asked why singers really so much like to work with him. And he answered, well, what they do is the most difficult thing in the world. And when you play this passage, you understand what he means because you really have center stage, and we poor clarinet players only have 3 or 4 lines, and an opera singer has it the whole opera. Yeah? So if singers are really sometimes too slow or not in tune or something, they do a really difficult thing. You have to say that. Okay, I just check the questions. Tosca questions, yeah. Difficult question. Well, I hope I don't. You have to understand that the whole world basically is playing the Böhm system, which is technically the quite better system. And in small Austria and then a little bigger Germany, the Müller system developed, and it makes a little different sound. We hope it has a little darker sound than most Böhm clarinets, and and in some commands and in some, when you listen to several CDs and recordings, many orchestras these days now sound alike. They sound similar, and it's really difficult to say which orchestra plays even for professionals. And it's just we try to keep this tradition of sound and of system. It also concerns the oboe and the little wider bore of the brass players, just to be good in the market. I mean, we appreciate this tradition, and we try to how to say it, to keep it on a real high level, and which works quite well, I think. But the Böhm clarinet it's like you wouldn't win an audition probably on a German clarinet in America or in Brazil. Yeah? It's just we try to keep our tradition in Austria, and in Germany it's not excluded in many orchestras anymore. So it's but it's a difficult question, of course. Yeah? Yeah. Okay, happy. Yeah, it's always a little difficult. Yeah? Yeah. Okay, so is there any passage somebody is really a lot more interested? I have a little. Okay. we had a technical passage now. Jenny or Jessica, more Pini di Roma or Scheherazade, or general practicing advice? What do you think is better for?
Whatever you're interested in sharing. I mean, I have my answer, but also we could see the comments too. I want this to
Okay.
be about everyone.
Okay. Then let's go to the could you share the Technikstunde ICA Spezial?
Yes, let's see. Okay, let me get that
So
ready.
that's about, but I also can read it. It's not, it's, if it doesn't work, it's no problem.
Let me find it. Yes, that was the Word
Okay.
document. Okay, can you see this? Is this it?
I know that's not, yeah. This was, yeah, it's okay. That's good. Yeah.
Okay.
It was one for my students, but it's okay. Okay. So when I will speak now, I hope this is interesting for everybody, about working on a technical passage. This is a lecture I made for my students in a Teams lecture. So, and it's about practicing in general. So when we practice an orchestral passage, which is really difficult, think of Scheherazade, of Shostakovich 9, and also of Beethoven 6, for example, we are basically, when we practice, we learn. Okay, so that's really important to know. When you read the pedagogy and the practicing books, you see that when you practice something, it's like learning a language, because your brain has to give all the orders to the fingers, to your breathing, and to your tongue, of course. Okay, so it's very important we give our body and our brain enough time to learn the right movements, and it is very important we practice the correct movements. Okay, because because learning is memorizing, and when you memorize a lot something which is wrong, you memorize it exactly as well as the right thing. So it's really important you give your body and your brain time to practice the right movements. Okay. So this is in German. Yeah, it would maybe better. Jenny, did you also mail ICA practicing methods? Do you have that document also?
Yes. Just a second.
Okay.
Let me share that.
Could you open this also? There's no music in there, but it's better understandable.
This one.
Yeah, this one, exactly. This is the English. Okay. Okay. So I have to switch also. So the first one for everybody is in German, but it is with music, with some groups of notes which help you what I mean. And the other one is without music, but in English. So you can choose which one you like better. Okay. So, and as I said before, when we practice something, we analyze the passage. Okay. And we don't call it, in modern pedagogy, we don't call anything a problem zone. We define and analyze an improvement zone. And you choose 2 or 3 note group is very often the core of a passage. Okay, and you choose, when you look at this music here, sometimes you have 2 or 3 notes which are the core of a technical passage. Okay, and you define this for yourself. This is really easy now here, and you vary the rhythm like you see in figure A, B, C, D, E, F, and you try to really optimize your finger movements, your breathing in these here, easy, but in your passage, tricky music. Okay, so that's the 2-note exercise to say. Okay, and then again in the other document, you draw your imaginary circle bigger and go to the 3-note method, which is defined here only by a C major chord. And you can vary these notes in many ways. This is easy here, but only when you think of an F minor chord. Every clarinet player will note this is getting when you cross the break, this is getting difficult very fast. And here is the really nasty one. Okay, and the last one is. And you practice your passage, your 3-note passage, the core of your improvement zone in these styles. And then, of course, when you watch a little more, when you go down in the document, method 3, for groups of 4 or more groups of notes, the articulation, which is printed in the Untitled Clarinet school. This was my basic method when I studied, and it's even now to change the articulation here in a 4-note group. And so on, and then you change the slur. To vary the things your brain, your fingers have to manage, and in order to be sure at a really nasty passage. Okay, and then you have again in the technique class for ICA document, you have mastered your passage, and only then you get faster. So it's very important when you practice all this, you are really slow. And all this to be really sure and have the necessary relaxation. Okay, so printed in red, very important, slowly first for all methods. There are no shortcuts in practicing. It's the same as in sports. Okay, well, I checked out kind of 13 methods. When you go down the document, like we spoke, the 2 or 3 note method for small groups of difficult notes. Okay. Then the Yettel method, that's what I was just talking about. And varying the articulation. Then what you always can do, you could practice B clarinet passage on the A clarinet, or a nasty etude, or even the bass clarinet or basset horn, when you have a really nasty thing like or Scheherazade or whatever. When you practice it, it's on the A clarinet anyway. You can practice it on the bass clarinet. Okay, it's especially nasty on the German clarinet because you have this forked fingering. I hope everybody sees it. So we are really afraid of that sometimes. So that's also recommendable to change the instrument. Okay, and then of course with a very important rhythm change method, you form different rhythms in your group of notes. Or and so on. You can make a triplet, you can make dotted rhythms, you can make whatever you want, but change and learn to be flexible. This is very, very important. Okay. So I don't see questions here. No questions. Okay, and I just continue. Okay. Then there's the notch by notch method. I have this expression from some American book, I think by David Pino or Keith Stein. of course, everybody knows and hardly uses the notch by notch method, because it consists of you, your clarinet, and a metronome. And you put this nasty metronome in a really difficult passage, for example, like 85 or something. And you practice slow until it works really perfectly. Then you put your metronome to 88, then play it 3 times, then you play it, put it to 90 or 91, play it 3 times or 5 times. Then you put it to 94 and so on until you really master it. But don't forget the coffee to make a break. That's very important. Okay. Then there is, of course, the add a note method. Thank you, Howard Klug, for this expression. When you again go to the other document, which is in German, you see the add a note method. I hope Howard is not angry with me. Here you again have 3 notes, so it's also maybe a variation of the 3-note method. When you look at this chord here, slower, you would have to practice slower at the beginning. And so on, you see the music, yeah, and you go up to high G. Also very recommendable with your metronome. Okay, this is the add note. You see the sense of the passage because you play the same 3 notes over the whole instrument. Okay, maybe in the middle is your improvement zone, but you draw an even bigger circle. So not only to master your 3 notes, maybe it's maybe the difficult thing here is, and you draw a bigger circle around the whole instrument. And the really nice variation of this is to play it from a high G. And so on and so on. Okay, so you start from here. When you see my arrow, you start from the back, and this is really getting difficult. Okay. There is also the add a phrase method. That's a variation of the add a note method. You can even add more notes, of course. When you think of Beethoven 4, you can play some notes staccato before more to make the passage even more difficult. Okay. Okay. This makes it even more difficult and longer. And when it comes to the phrase, you really have your 100% you need to win the audition. Okay. What's very important is to maybe when you look at the English document again, the emotional and the memorizing method, it's maybe you can combine these. It's always good to memorize a passage. So it really belongs part of yourself, of your brain, of your body. And it's always, in every pedagogy book it's written, it's always advisable and possible to make music even only of a very simple line. It's always better when you play with some kind of emotion and you lead the phrase you're playing somewhere. Okay, so try to build and to vary phrases you play. That's really very important. Okay, just go to my, I want to show you. When you look at the Pini di Roma, I just stay on my big clarinet to show you this. You have so many possibilities here. and you can phrase to every note in the whole scale. So the more often you try to vary your expression, the more the more your phrasing will improve, of course. Yeah. So memorizing methods, I said before. Okay, which method do you mean? That would be interesting. Okay, but this can only be a summary, of course. Recording, as we spoke before, recording yourself and listening method. Even listening to a recording is a method of practicing, of course. Yeah? I think that's clear. Okay. Then the partner method may be a little tricky. Use it only with your best friend. When you repeat and practice various methods with a good friend, probably a clarinet player, doesn't have to be a clarinet player, of course, can be tricky, but if your friend is a really good friend, you will both probably improve your playing. Okay. You can also use your partner to do articulation training, to do intonation training. To when you play Tosca, to play a simple bass line on the piano, so you have a control of your intonation then, of course, and then you change roles. So that makes sense perfectly. Or if your partner is a pianist, he or she can play the piano part. Yeah? That's what I wanted to say before. There, Nikolai Pfeffer, the German clarinetist, made an edition of some passages with piano accompaniment. I put it in my document. I will give it to Jenny and Jessica afterwards. This is very recommendable to play orchestral passages with piano. That's also a method for practicing, of course. Okay, then we have the mental training method. I'm not the specialist there, but it's obvious when you drive in the subway or in the train, probably not in your car, you could practice a passage silently with and without your instrument, so you can train with your fingers the movements. This is also a kind of a type of memorizing method. But there are books about that. Also, if when you use your inner imagination to practice, you can even do it without moving a finger. Okay, I didn't use that so much, but especially when I trained memorizing, I did this more or less with my fingers, but not to get technically better, just to memorize it better. Okay, and very important is the relaxed method. So to play the passage like an improvisation and without the demand of being perfect. And probably it will be perfect just then. So with all the practicing and analyzing and memorizing and recording and working also scientifically, stay relaxed. It's a privilege to do all that and to work with music, with so beautiful music, which is composed by so many good composers. So don't forget the fun about this all. Okay, that's very important.
And I hate to interrupt, as always. We
No
do have to
problem.
get ready for our next video premiere, so this is a really interesting conversation. I know there are an infinite number of excerpts and too little time to not only practice them all, but also to discuss them all. But maybe this is a good time to wrap up, unless anyone has any final questions or comments that they would like to share. In the meantime, we do have a video premiere coming up at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, so in about 45 minutes. And I want to thank you so much for sharing all of your wisdom and knowledge and practice tips and orchestral experience and everything that you've done. We do have 2 more video premieres tonight, and we have tomorrow and Sunday filled with activities, panels, presentations. I hope you're all enjoying this event as much as I am. If you have any questions, experience any problems, you want to give us feedback, then feel free to email Jessica or myself. I'll type our email addresses into the comments. So Jessica is edo@clarinet.org. I am assistant at clarinet.org. But anything that you want to share. And thank you again, Reinhard, so much for sharing all of your knowledge. It's been a real pleasure listening.
Thank you. It was a pleasure. Bye. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.